Okay, so um, let's start over here. Let's start over here on page 18A. You with me?
I am right with you.
Hello? You with me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Let's start on
Perfect.
page 18A. You see the page?
Yes.
So here there was a whole discussion why you're not allowed to uh toivel the kalim uh on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And the Gemara was saying that the issue is here because you might carry it in the Rishus Harabim, and the Gemara says that that would be another violation. So the Gemara asked, why are we so strict uh, to say that even though you're allowed to, but you might come to the Isser that's Gzeira Ligzeira, and the whole thing seems to be far fetched. The Gemara brought various proofs from different places that we don't take it to that extent, to that extreme, to say that we're not going to allow it because if you allow this, you might something else. So let's look inside Weiter. We're up to Isive. He asked him a question from a Bryce. In the Bryce, it says, Keli Shenitma Me'erev Yontiv. You have a Keli that became Tome from before Yontif. Now, since it became Tome from before Yontif, you had an opportunity to immerse that Keli before Yontif. Now, you want to use that Keli on Yontif, but you had an opportunity to immerse it before Yontif. So, therefore, Ein Matbilin Oisoy B'Yontif, we do not immerse it on Yontif. We cannot do it on Yontif. Why? Because you should have done it before Yontif. Now, Rashi stipulates over here, Rashi brings down from the Gemara Vayter, what kind of a tuma did that Keli get? So Rashi says, Uba'av hatuma, a Keli that got tome by an Av hatuma. An Av hatuma means the father of Tuma, which is the first level of Tuma. The only thing that could make a Keli Tome min HaTorah is an Av HaTuma. That is when we have an issue. The Gemara will make later on, Rashi brings it out over here, but the Gemara will make the distinction. If a Keli became Tome from Avlad Hatuma, from the second level of Tuma, that's not really a Tuma min HaTorah. That's only a Tuma midrabanan. We'll learn a little bit more about it later on. But, and therefore, over there, you would be allowed to toivel it on Yom Tov because it's not really it's not a real tuma. It's not a Torah tuma. It's only a rabbinic tuma. We'll see in a minute. I know Rashi brings it out over here, but
When it says Avatuma, isn't Avatuma like Tuma's mate, like the highest
no,
level?
that's a vi avoisa tuma. That's a tumas mace. With something that touches a mace is becomes an av hatuma. If asheretz is an av hatuma, an insect, those are av hatuma. Something that touches that becomes a vlada tuma, becomes a secondary. A vlada tuma cannot be really metame akeli, only an avatum. So Rashi stipulates akeli shenitma berev yomtev uba avatuma, and it touched the main category of tuma. Kidel, come on. The Gemara will say later on. So then the halacha is ein matbilin oisui b'yontev. You're not allowed to yontev. We're bringing this in to ask a question that we're going to show that we don't make a gzeda l'gzeda. Let's go weiter. Ein madbilin oisa biyontiv, sagt Rashi, hoyil v'hoyil loy lahadbilon libayot, because he should have toiveled it from the daytime before Yontif. The Tumah took place before Yontif. He should have toiveled that. We're not going to allow him to toivel it on Yontif. But what happens with Yontif if it became Tomei on Yontif itself? Then Madbilin Oisoi B'Yontif, then you could toivel it on Yontif because you didn't have an opportunity. Madbilin Oisoi B'Yontif. So, and Rashi says, "V'yishtamish boy hayoim chulin." Rashi has the question: what is it going to help if he does immerse that keli? A, a person or a keli which was immersed in the mikvah has to wait until the sun sets. Like we know, like the Kohanim, they can't eat the truma until the sun sets. So even if they go in the mikvah by daytime, or even if we immerse the keli during the daytime, you're still not going to be allowed to put in that keli truma or kachim. You can't put it into that keli. Why? Because you have to wait till sunset. So Rashi says, what is it going to help that you're going to be toivel the keli, but you're not going to be able to use it anyways because you have to wait for sunset. So Rashi no, v'yishtamish boy hayoim chulin, and you can use today chulin. The only thing that you have to wait till sunset before you use it is if you're going to eat truma or you're going to eat kachim. She'ein tzrichim hariv shemesh. They don't require the sunset. As soon as you toivel the keli, then you can eat chulin. You can eat right away chulin. Now you're going to ask the question. Mirash doesn't ask it, but I'm assuming, why does he need? He can eat chulin that is tummy, but people want to eat chulin ataras hakodesh. It's the time of the yontif. They don't want to eat tummy chulin. They want the chulin to be in a clean keli. If you immerse the keli for chulin, this is a clean keli. It's a toivel diki keli. It's no longer tummy for chulin. For truma, you'd have to wait out of shemesh. That's what Rashi says. Matbil noisu b'yomtiv, v'yishtamish b'hayim chulin, and you use today for chulin. She'ein tzrichim harav shemesh. They don't require sunset. So
But
now
then
it
if the
goes
day
back.
after, if there's a day of Yontif, if Yontif is Friday, and so he tovels it on Friday, he can eat chulin, but um he can eat everything else on Shabbos the next day. So
Right,
that's
but we're not
maybe
talking about 2 day yontif. We're talking about the one day, just for that day. It says that it's
okay.
okay. We're not talking about in that scenario. I mean, then you wouldn't be allowed to prepare for Yom Tov Shabbos. I mean, that's another scenario. But right now, the question is, what is the Gemara bringing down this Bryson? The Im Isa, if it's true what you're saying, that you're not allowing him to toivel because he might carry it, and he might carry it from a Shusa Yochid in another place. So if it's true that we make extra gzeres, nigzer the yomtiv, or to that of yomtiv. So why don't we make a decree, since you're only allowing him to toivel it if it's a yomtiv, but if it's erev yomtiv, you don't allow him. So why don't we make a gzera? We say you should be allowed, even though it became Taman Yontiv. But if you're going to allow to toivel a keli on Yontiv, the person is going to start toiveling dishes that are tamei, even though they were from Erev Yontiv, because they're going to confuse. We make a gezerah. If it's true that we are worried so strong, and we so strict as not to allow, by extension, because you're worried that he's going to start carrying, in even if he has a mikvah in his chotzer, like all the extend. Why don't we extend the gzeira, and let's say that Yontif should not be allowed to immerse the keli, because you're going to come to immerse it, even if it became Tom and Yom Tov, which you're not allowed to because you had an opportunity before Yom Tov. And the Gemara answers no, that there's not a, in this case, we're not going to make a gezerah. A gezerah you make in common occurrences. If a halacha is unique, a scenario which is unique, it's not a common case. We're not going to extend it and say, oh, maybe. To begin with, the Gemara answers, for something to become Tam on Yom Tov is an uncommon case. On Yom Tov, everybody was careful to be tohir. Whereas, how does something become Tameh? This is not a common occurrence. So if it did become Tameh, we're not going to say, okay, don't toivel it because you might come to use it. You might come to toivel even if it became, because we don't make gzeiras if the scenario is a non-common scenarios. And the Gemara answers, the Gemara's answer. Tuma b'yomtev milsad leishkichai. For something to become Tameh on Yontiv is a matter which is not common. The loishkichi, Dr. Rashi, why is it not common for it to become Tameh? Shera hakoil metarin beregel. Everybody becomes clean for the Yontiv. The kolshkein shezihidin mili Tameh. And for sure, they're also careful from things becoming Tameh. So normally, Kalim don't become Tameh on Yontiv. Now, in this case, it did become Tameh on Yontiv. Now you want to say, no, don't toivel it because that will bring a person to toivel. But it's not a common case. And a case which is not common, the Rabbanon did not decree, and therefore it's okay for the person to immerse it, even though normally maybe we would extend the gezerah. But in this case, we're not going to make the gezerah. Okay, so the Gemara has another case. Isibi. The Gemara says, I'll ask you another question. And this is the Rashi brought down before. You have a keli shenitma ba'avatuma. A keli that became tomei ba'avatuma. And as we said in the previous Mishnah, if it happened before Yontiv, you can't immerse it. Keli shenitma ba'avatuma. And Rashi says, ba'erev Yontiv kidliyah. Because already we said before in the Beitzah that if the Tumah takes place on Yom Tov, then you could table it. So the Beitzah says, Ein madbil noisiv Yom Tov, you're not going to table it on Yom Tov. So Rashi, the kiv on the Tomei minat Torah, havali kimasakin. What's the problem? B'chlal toivel, Rashi brings down. I mean, you know why Rashi has to explain it over here. We've been talking about toiveling on Yom Tov, but Rashi says, since it is Tomei Minat Torah, as the Raisa says, Keli Shenitma B'Av Hatuma. It's an Av Hatuma, so that's a Tuma Minat Torah. Havalekim Esakin. Rashi, that's why Rashi explains it over here to emphasize that it's a Torah Tuma. If you go ahead and you immerse it, it's like fixing the Keli. What happened if it's bivlad hatumo? If the keli became tomei bad through a second of tuma, that's only a tuma midrabanan. Then madbilan should be yontif. Then it's okay to tovel on yontif. Rashi says kul bivlad tuma. So Rashi ein kan tikun. It's not considered fixing it if the whole tuma is not really tomei, because a keli that touches avlada tuma doesn't become tomei. The midiraisa toir mal yehu. The raisa is completely, it's fully toir. A keli that touched avlada tuma is fully toir. She'ein keli tomei elo ba'av hatuma. A keli can only become tomei ba'av hatuma. An av hatuma can make a keli tomei. A sheretz can make a keli tomei, but of secondary, something that has become a vlad touched an avatuma cannot make a keli tama. Kedetanya ba'akol shachtim daf chafei amad aleph. We learned in akol shachtim chafei amad aleph. It says of there like this: Oichel umashke metamin ma'avir klei cheres. The Torah talks about there that if you have a earthenware vessel and you put food or a drink inside the, let's say you hold by a string, you hold a food, you put it into the inside of the vessel, they would become tomei from the ear of the klei cheres. And the ear of the klei cheres is considered a vlad hatuma. The klei cheres itself is tomei. The ear is the vlad hatuma. If you put food inside that ear, so that means the food and drink become tomei from the vlad hatuma, from the avir klei cheres. But the ein kol hakelim metamim avir klei cheres. But all kelim cannot become tomei from the ear of the klei cheres, mishum dehavelei vlad hatuma, because the ear of the klei cheres is a vlad hatuma. Shema shebetoicha ein metame machmas hasheretz, because what's in the ear of the is not become tame because of the sheretz which touch the keli, ela machmas avir keli. So you're not becoming tame because of the sheret. The sheret touches the keli, but the ear of the keli has not been touched by the sheretz. That's tame of vlada tuma. So therefore, only if you have oichlim, food can become tame from the vlada tuma, but not another keli. And so therefore, we see minat Torah avlata tuma cannot be metame. That's not called a tikkun. Now, the Rashi learns clearly that this is talking about that the keli became tame from Erev Yom Tov, like we said before in the previous Beitzah. Rashi says there's another opinion. Yesh mefarshim, other one explain keli shenitma ba'avatuma afilu nitma b'yontiv, that this Beitzah goes by even if it became tom on yontiv. Ein matbilin oisem b'yontiv, you can't tovlin on yontiv. And why the timer? And the reason is because what Rashi said before differently. What Rashi says, others want to say, Mishum de boyi harev shemesh, you need the sun to set. So therefore, you're not going to be allowed to eat from the keli anyways, because sun didn't set. The tuma de oiraisa tzricha harev shemesh, because a tuma minat Torah needs sunset. The difference between whether it became Tomei from the Torah or it's Tomei the Rabbanon is whether it needs sunset and whether it's usable, the Keli. Okay, Hilkach, they say, Hoyil ve'nedroi hayom l'tashmish loyat bilano. So since it was Tomei by a minat Torah ba'avatuma, it needs sunset. So you're not, what are you going to use it for? It's still tummy. But Rashi already told us, Vikashili, Rashi says this is difficult. You can still use it, chulin, as Rashi argued before. She'ein ha'arev shemesh elo l'truma v'kochim. Because ha'arev shemesh you only need for truma kochim. Keditnan, like it says, toval va'ola, once you immersed, you went up, oichel b'maiser. So meiser, which is chulin, you can eat harev shemshei This is a Mishnah in a Goyim Perik Yudal Mishnah Gimel. So therefore, see the other Mefarshim have a problem because in the Beitzah it just says Keli Shenitma Bavatuma Eimat Bilnes Yontiv. We translated Merev Yontiv. They trying to say maybe even on Yontiv. And the reason is because you're not going to use it for anything. But the Rashi argues that you still could use it because you could use it for chulin, and you don't have to use it for truma and other things. So why shouldn't we be allowed to do it? So the Rashi learns that it's talking about before. But what does the Gemara bring down this brisa? The im isa, if it's true that we extend the gzeira, nigzer ha atu ha. Why don't we make a decree that just like why are we going to allow you to do avlada tuma? Because it's not real. But why don't we say if we're going to use the vlada tuma, we're going to come to use the avatuma too? So why don't we make the gzeira? So we should extend the isur because of the gzeira. And the Gemara says that tuma hechi mashkachas lo. So how do you find a case of Vlada Tuma? What would be the case of Vlada Tuma? Says the Gemara. Avlada Tuma only applies to Kohanim. The issue. Rashi explains. Mi hu hatzorich lehadbiloi. Who needs to immerse a keli that touched Avlada Tuma? Einei Elokoin, only a kohen. A Yisrael would not have to immerse it. Why? The Vlad Hatuma. The Vlad Hatuma Rishon. The Keli Shenitma Boy Sheni. The Vlad Hatuma is a Rishon. And the Keli Shenitma Boy Sheni Umutar Lechulin. So there's Bechlal for Chulin, there is no problem to use that Keli. She'ein Sheni Oisa Shlishi B'Chulin. Because a Sheni cannot make a Shlishi in Chulin. You only have to be Mad for Truma. The only one who would need to be Mad Bilit for Truma. For Chulin, you don't have to be Mad. So Gabi Kohenim. Kohenim is Rizmei. And they're not going to come, so we don't have a gzeira. By Kohanim, we don't have the gzeira. Inami is rizim alove tuba lekleim vivis l'shkicha. Another pshat would be there's rizim for making sure that tuma doesn't come to their vessels, and it's a milsa de l'shkicha. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, and we're here, and we'll go it over again a little bit next time when we meet the mitzvah.
It's just a little complicated because we're not used to. I'm not used to. We're dealing with issues of tuma. It's not.
Yeah.
Something
okay. We'll go it over again.
Okay.
I got to run downstairs for mincha. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.